So it's not a full-sized quilt, but it is, you know, one of those cool little like wall quilts that people will just display instead of using for like warmth. Here she is. This is what you clicked on the video for, I'm guessing. But if you would like to know how this project came to be, keep watching. Hi, welcome to my floor. I haven't made an IRL project on this channel in a hot minute. It's just been me playing a lot of Spiritfarer, and that's about it. However, I've been working on this project for months. And it's finally complete, it's finally finished, it's finally on this door, so we can talk about it because I think it deserves an explanation. So why? Let's start with that. Why do this? Why waste perler beads on something like this? I was sitting at my parents' house. You're visiting your parents and you go through their craft storage room where all of the holiday decorations are hiding with all of your mom's craft stuff that she doesn't use because she's into quilting and embroidering right now and not into scrapbooking, and all of that stuff is in the same room together, and so you're just scavenging a little bit and you come across those like little old like foam stickers in the shapes of like hearts and stars, and then you remember, oh, when I was really little we had those little plastic beads that you can melt with an iron. Eventually, as I was looking through all of the stuff in my parents' storage room, I found a container of perler beads. In this container, to be specific, and I remember this from when I was a kid because this was the kit that I used when I was a very young child in the 2000s. This is what was used. And I looked at it and I thought, you know, these are never gonna get used. So what if I made something using the perler beads? What if I did that? What if I did that? What if nobody was going to use them? So I took them. The perler bead kit also had one of these little square pegboards with it. I had decided pretty quickly, once I had the square and all of the colors, that a quilt would probably be the best creation and utilization of all of the beads. And I also kind of wanted to have a cute little wall quilt. I thought that would be fun. I knew it wasn't gonna be massive. It'd be a fun little quilt. Who doesn't love a fun little quilt? The first step of the creation process was to figure out how big I can make the quilt. There's really only one way to do that, which is count all of the beads. And as you can see, it may be a small quilt, but that's a whole lot of beads. So it doesn't have a count on this. And I don't have the original packaging for what this originally started in, so I was on my own. I took the liberty of counting every single color by hand. There is a simpler way to do this, which I think I have a couple of pictures of, and if I have a couple pictures of this, I'm going to put them up here. I had a specific counting strategy, which is to just very quickly put all of the beads into 5x5 squares so that I would have like 25 per square, and then I could count up to 100. I had a method. This still took forever, but I had a method and I counted. At the end of that, I had a total of 4,098 beads, and I counted every single one of them to the best of my knowledge. The next step of the process was to then figure out how many squares I could make using my 4,098 beads. I was gonna make granny squares, or kind of like something similar to a granny square, and I knew that I would need holes in each of the squares to string thread through to tie everything together, because I couldn't rely on how I melted the squares to be able to have like the holes to pull things through. I had to have my own backup plan because I knew I wasn't going to do a good, even like ironing job. I did my calculations. This is a 14x14 grid minus 4 beads. I would be able to make about 21 squares. And that's what I did. I did all 21 of them. You might think that I made 21 squares so that I could have a backup square, but the reason why I did all 21 squares is actually because I forgot that it was 21 squares instead of 20. I finally decided that the best layout for the quilt would be a 4x5. I contemplated a 4x4, and then I contemplated a 3x7, and then I eventually decided that 4x5 was probably the best approximate size that would be reasonable. So I count the beads, I figure out how many squares I need. What next? Making the squares. Which was a lot of fun. I got to do a bunch of different designs, which was delightful. This was actually the first one I did. This one down here was the first one that I made. I decided that in order to incorporate as many colors as I could while not having to worry about needing specific colors for specific designs, like if I were to create a smiley face or if I was to create a brick wall, I need specific colors for that. But if I did a bunch of granny square-esque stuff, I would be able to mix colors in a way that made it really easy and not have to worry about needing a certain color for whatever pattern I was making, which made it a lot less stressful. I came up with a bunch of granny square patterns, and towards the end I got really creative with them. I think this was one of my last ones. This was one of my last ones. I was really scavenging for colors on this one because I was just starting to use whatever I had left at that point. As I was kind of creating all of these different patterns, I was starting to struggle to come up with ideas. I thought it would look really good if it was basically just granny squares, but I did want a little bit of extra stuff in there. I thought it would be fun to have like little designs here and there. I thought that would be really cool. Eventually, after trying to come up with fun patterns, I resorted to just staring at the bins of various colors that I had until it spoke to me, and I was able to come up with the next pattern that I wanted to make. Like, for example, oh, this orange. This reminds me of, like, construction zone lines. And then after making the lines, oh, you know what? It looks a little bit more like a clownfish. And then I reused the pattern over here with some yellow and black for, like, hazard zone. We have construction over here. We have hazard over here. And that one was black and yellow. This one was orange and white. It could be hazard lines, but it could also be a bee. We love the bees. Applebee's. So I tried to recreate the Applebee's logo, and honestly, pretty good. Honestly, not bad. I'm pretty happy with this. After that, I think I made the smiley face, and then the brick wall was a struggle. I actually ended up missing one of the beads. I don't know what happened, but I didn't have enough to finish this pattern, so I had to kind of make do. When I ran out of specific beads, I kind of aimed to hide them behind where I knew there would end up being string so that it didn't look as bad. So I think one of the biggest examples of this was, it's the orange and white one. There's actually like a gray bead right behind some of the string on this because I didn't have enough of some of the colors to finish it. I completed some of the designs using other colors, so I didn't have to make a new pattern. I didn't want to start over. I didn't want to come up with something else. I just wanted to finish the pattern that I had. And it turned out just fine. And you can't even tell. Who would know? Somebody who does this, you can barely even see it because there's like even more yarn in the way. You can barely see it. Who cares? Not me. I definitely don't care. I'm definitely not mad that I ran out of some colors. I'm not pissed. Who, me? Pissed? What? Not me. I make all of the designs. And you might be like, oh, did you iron the designs as you did them? No. I put them all into little baggies and I kept them in the bags as I continued to do the other designs, just in case I needed to move some stuff around. And also at that point in time, I didn't feel good about my ironing situation. I decided that it would probably be for the best for me to make all of the patterns all at once and then iron all of them later. And I did have some spare beads at the end, which are what these two pieces are here. These are my test pieces. I just added them to the bottom here just for decoration. And then this little one down here, this little bead, it looks kind of, if you look at it at the right angle, it looks kind of like a spool of thread, which I thought was fun. Because I ironed this bead. You see it? Do you see it? Do you see it? This is all of the beads that I had. I ironed all of them. I'm genuinely shocked that for the most part, this was a pretty smooth process. Nothing too awful went wrong. And I am grateful for that because this was really fun. and this was a really cool physical project that I really wanted to do for a long time, and I'm so glad that it turned out. After I had them all ironed, the next step of the process was to tie it all together, put it all together. And you can't just take a sewing machine to this, so I had to do it by hand. All of this is sewn together by embroidery thread, and then I decided to make it worse for myself and crochet a backing for it. Now, I am not a crocheter. Crochet only recently started to click for me. I started watching some tutorials on how to do some basic crocheting, and there's a hexagon cardigan tutorial by Passionate Kelsey that is absolutely delightful, and that was the first time that it actually clicked for me how to do crochet. So the back of this is actually a granny rectangle, and she's beautiful. And you might say, wow, did you so you sewed in everything, and it looks like you did a bunch of knots with the yarn in here too. So did you sew in all of the ends? No, they're all tucked in. Everything's tucked behind this. You can kind of see some of it, but it's not horrifically prominent, which is kind of what I was looking for. I did debate for a little bit not to tuck in all of the ends from all of the tying, because basically all I did was I just cut up little strips of yarn and just did a bunch of surgeon's knots all over the back of it, just to kind of keep everything in place. I really didn't want to sew in ends. And then I decided, you know what? No one's gonna look between the perler beads and the crochet. Nobody's gonna pry this open and go, oh, you didn't sew in all your ends? Oh, look at all this embroidery thread. You didn't sew that in either? Who cares? This is my project. I can do what I want. And with that, we reached the end of the project. Everything was done. Everything was sewed together. This is currently being supported by a few pieces of cardboard that I glued together and then sewed to the back. Some display quilts have kind of a wood back on the top of them that you can just like clip onto things so that you can display them. You can't really see it, but I can. If you see any pink, it's because I washi taped this to my door so that everything stayed upright, because it'll slouch if I don't, because this is tied, but it's not secured. It is secured, but in a different way. This is secured to the door, and then this is secured to a doorknob, and this is secured to a door hinge. It's all secured to different parts of a door. All valuable, all important.
Hello, editing me here. I forget to mention in the recording that I did actually have a big issue with one of the squares breaking, but thankfully it was at one of the corners, and it was after that specific corner had already been sewn in by all of the embroidery thread and by me sewing it with yarn to the crochet piece. So it was, I didn't have to do any more work with it, but I did have to finish doing the rest of the sewing while worrying about whether or not the piece was going to fall out. But as you can see from the recording, it's not falling, it's not going anywhere, it just looks a little bit broken. That piece is completely locked in. It's not going anywhere, which is really, really nice, but that was a bit stressful. Anyway, I forgot to mention that. The other thing about adding the crochet backing, first of all, every good quilt has a backing. Second of all, the crochet backing allowed me to have an additional thing to attach the squares to, because on their own, they were pretty loose. Once I sewed them to the crocheted piece, they were a lot more stable, and I felt a lot better about the project overall. I had already decided that I wanted to crochet because I thought it would be a really fun added step, but I was really grateful that I did choose to do that because it was not stabilized without it. So that's my extra anecdote in the middle of this. I'm gonna go to bed soon. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the video. Woo. Wow! Wow! Oh, I need to sleep.
It's all sewn together. It's complete. It's finished. I did it. I did everything. I used all of the beads. Right? I used all of the beads. Right? I had this realization about a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. Maybe 3 weeks. I don't remember. The last 2 weeks have been very busy for me. I thought I was gonna record this video like 2 weeks ago. It didn't happen. And then I thought I was gonna record this video a week ago. Didn't happen. Some time ago, I realized, you know, I didn't actually count to see if I used all of the beads. So I did a count of all of the beads. And let me just pull out my handy dandy phone here and read out the totals so that we can see whether or not I actually successfully used all of the beads. Because isn't that an excellent question? Don't we want to know if I actually succeeded in using up something that wasn't going to be used? From a total of 4,098 beads, for the main body of the 21 squares, I used 4,032 beads. For these little tiny small test triangles that I used for testing the ironing process, I used 32 beads for each triangle. And then I had 1 bead left over from that entire process that just hangs here. I have the spool of thread hanging bead. 4,032, 32, 32, 1. And that's a total of 4,097 beads out of 4,098 beads. Yay! I was actually pretty calm when I made this realization. I did the calculations and I stared at my calculator and I went, okay, because the thing is, I moved between the design completion and doing the ironing. I moved. I had to pack up all of my things and go to a different place, including transferring all of this stuff. The bead has to be somewhere in my things. Somewhere. Because I remember picking up a bead off of the floor of my bedroom at some point, and I don't really know where it ended up, but I know that I did pack it because I thought, oh, a perler bead. I'm gonna put this with my stuff just to like have it just in case, because it would be kind of a funny joke, because I couldn't tell if it had been a bead that had been lost in the counting process or if it had been a bead lost in the designing process, and I figured that I would figure that out pretty fast, knowing that there was just some bead out there in the ether somewhere in one of my boxes, just chillin'. This was the realization that I made about 2 weeks ago. But yesterday, I found it. There are all 4,098 beads on this design. I used all of them. That's really exciting. Yeah, the last bead was just sitting on my vanity. I don't know what happened. Freely sitting on the counter of this desk, of this vanity thing. It was meant to be. They're all there. That's the end of the story. It's done, it's finished, it's completed, and she's beautiful. And now I'm gonna hang this up somewhere in my room. Thank you for coming on this journey with me. I really appreciate it. If you like stuff like this, feel free to stick around. I do plan on making other physical projects in the future. If you also like video games, even better reason to stick around because I also play those on this channel. I will see y'all next time. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Bye. My foot is asleep. Oh gosh. Okay. 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 Bring it back to life. If I shake my foot, just like physically shake it. Chat, is this real? Am I good? Okay.